and welcome to the podcast. Hi, guys, this is Annika Hutchinson, and I am the host of the podcast for Change Be Bold. Today, I have our guest for this week, James. Hi, James, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
I know it's such a pleasure to have you here to, share more on your journey, your experience. It's the light through the pouring rain book that you have written about the journey. Firstly, let's start off with, what was the journey like for you personally? The experience for you, found out that your fiance was diagnosed with cancer. How was the journey for you?
The journey overall was quite the drink of water, so to speak. It was quite the tall task here. You really don't envision it. When you're in the mid 20s, like the millennial type age, I think all of us to an extent felt invincible. You feel like nothing could ever harm you, nothing ever can touch you. You're untouchable here.
Yeah,
Uh, so
exactly.
when this so when this diagnosis happened, we both kind of looked at ourselves and be like, "There's no way this diagnosis is happening to us. There's absolutely no way." You usually hear about these sort of scenarios later down in life, but
Yeah,
we weren't immune to it. So what I wanted to do with this book was to bring awareness, first and foremost about cancer, and it can get us. We're not the youngest ones to ever go through it. There's unfortunately there's infants, and unfortunately there's elders as well, and everything in between. So
yes,
there's no real, invincibility from the diagnosis here. But what I wanted to do was to honor her legacy here. I wanted readers to know beforehand that, she passed away. So I wanted to hold the reader by their hand and walk them through the story and to have them go through the same sort of train of thought I was going through in the present moment. And I wanted to be a testimony of God's goodness here. I was blessed with an additional 3 years with her. I know it seems like polar opposites. I know it seems hard for a lot of readers to wrap their head around that. How could you want to honor your fiance's legacy and be a testimony of God's goodness? Is that the same guy
exactly.
who took your fiance? I know it's hard for people to wrap their heads around, but that same man who did that was the same man who took her peacefully and blessed me with an additional 3 years. So I'm forever in debt, and that's how I'll continue to tell the story here. But it's quite a bit. It's quite a bit. Just it really depends how you dissect the story. There's so many different avenues to go through it.
Yeah.
But overall, though, I just wanted to be able to help and inspire others.
Nice. And you talked about your journey, the faith part of it. How important was your faith in this process?
Sure, it was definitely important for sure. I who am I to judge? I'm never gonna slap anybody's hand. It's to each his own. I'm not saying
Yeah,
this book is it's not the gospel. I am not gonna hit you with a sermon in this book.
yeah,
I'm just telling the readers how my fiance and I navigated it through it. Prior to this whole diagnosis, my fiance and I both knew we were on the same page. How we kind of saw life and stuff. But we never truly like had God like on our sleeve constantly, constantly, constantly. I think that's
yeah.
how a lot of us are. Is like you really don't turn to God until you absolutely need God.
Need
Until
him.
you need
Mm-hmm.
absolute the most help. So that's how kind of we were. And now, my faith is on my sleeve. I continuously wear it. And let I have no shame on it. No, I'm not embarrassed. I will, let people
Yep.
know how I feel about God all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's if that's how we navigated through it. If that's how they choose to navigate it, I'm very happy we can relate to it. But if not, this is not a story to say, if you don't believe, don't read the book. Not it's the polar opposite of that. However,
Exactly.
you need to proceed forward is that's your navigator. Let that be your navigator here. Just because I speak about elements of God here doesn't mean that you can't read this book or you shouldn't read this book. If it's the intuition you have, if it's luck, if it's your faith, your religion, whatever you do to keep you move, whatever you use as your navigator to keep you moving, by all means. But God was navigator in our story.
Yeah, yeah. And they have this saying to say that, we can't see the purpose sometimes of what we go through. We can't see the purpose of it many times. And there's always a story, there's always a journey that is unfolding for us. And it's just for us to allow it to go through and take the lesson that we are learning from it and use it. Many times the lesson comes in different ways for us. It's not going to be always or happy experiences, but it's also a life lesson that you can take from the experience that you're going through and use it, whether that is to help you to see things differently, help us to see things differently, but it's a journey that we're all
And
taking. Your journey, definitely, you did not plan this out, you did not foresee this, and I'm sure your family did not foresee this. How was your family? How was that journey for them? How was that experience for them to help you through this process?
in the as you start to read the story, and I purposely made it this way. I wanted the readers to know that my mom was the MVP of this whole process. Without her, this process is not a process at all. Unfortunately, prior to my fiance, I lost 8 family members to cancer, all cancer related items.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, cancer and my family are like this. Like, we know each other too well. We know each other on a first name basis. That's how close we are at this point. It's very unfortunate, but at the same time, instead of harping on the negativity of the situation, we try to spin it into positive. Be all right, now we're the most prepared family they could possibly be for the situation. So
Yeah.
when she heard about the diagnosis, and I approached my mom and said, "Mom, this is the case scenario." Her family, very thank God bless them. To be honest, they hadn't really experienced loss and they hadn't experienced a cancer diagnosis. But at the same token, you don't have time to learn. There's not a book. You have to.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the fly experience. It's on job
Yeah.
experience
Mm-hmm.
here. So with that being said, thankfully they saw the bigger picture and they put their pride to the side because like what parents would be willing to give their daughter to another family and be like, you could do it, I can't. No, that's
Yeah.
humongous. It's huge. All the
Mm-hmm.
kudos to them. So once we all had the conversation, they gave us a blessing to for her to live with us here. And my mom is the MVP because she said, well, no hesitation. Of course, why wouldn't I do that?
Yes. Yes.
My mom was in the trenches with her. My mom was at the appointment. She was at the chemo. She was, my mom could make the absolute worst case scenario the best situation possible. And,
Oh.
I was in the first few months I was there, I was doing those things. But, when my mom started to see it was taking a toll onto me, she's the one who stepped her game up and just kept providing and providing and, allowing me to go back to work and be the provider I was previously and go back to work. And it's without her, none of this is possible. I always tell her, like, I tell her every single day prior to anything I do, like, Mom, I was speaking so highly of you, and she's always like, no, you weren't. Yeah, okay. Like any parent would, but I
Yeah.
sincerely am always appreciative of my mom and what she's done for my fiance and I, and during the whole process. So it's everything. She's family is everything. Whoever that is, whoever your MVP of the family is, it doesn't have to be one person. It could be tons of
Yeah.
MVPs. We don't have to limit it here. So my
Exactly.
mom,
Yeah.
my mom was my MVP, and I'm forever grateful for her.
Shout out to mom.
Big shout out to mom.
Yeah. That's amazing that she was, she stood behind you 100%, and even with your fiance, 100%. I mean, it's, as you said, your family was actually equipped in this area, and for her parents to say, hey, you know what, we're going to let your family take care of her, that was great. That is love right there. So that's amazing. So when did you realize you wanted to become an author?
Sure. You know what? It wasn't. I don't have a writer's background. Like I've gone on record to say the story before. I don't have like I wasn't a philosopher growing up. I wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get nothing but A's in English class. Honestly, it just took two quick moments in my life that gave me the
Yes.
confidence need be to be an author. I use writing as just a platform. Honestly, once I was 2 years removed from the situation, I was in a better place mentally. If I had told a story immediately, this thing would be completely different. I would have train wrecked on this, and everything else I've ever done. So I'm
Yes.
in a way better place now. But I use it as an outlet. I was basically writing just an open diary and like a recollection of all the situations we had gone through. And next thing you know, it's like, oh man, I think I got something here. But I'm the farthest from having a writer's background. I wasn't special in English. I wasn't lower learning English. I always had trouble with writing. So this wasn't some God. This wasn't so God grafted to where I was like
Mm-hmm.
gradually I was building myself up for this. It was actually the complete opposite where I never envisioned to be an author. I'm very thankful for the opportunity and the platform, and I respect the craft.
Yes.
Um, but this is the only way I was able to get my story out. I can't just go jump on the TV and be like, "Hey, everybody, this is me." No, I
Yeah.
was able to have the opportunity. I was able to take the story into my own hands and be able to tell it. So becoming a writer wasn't necessarily the thing I envisioned growing up, but I'm very happy with the way things turned out. And I guess that's how God sees the bigger plan, because if it was up to me, I probably would have been still working in the special ed field, which I was doing previously to writing, or I
Mm-hmm.
may have found myself being a personal trainer, which was always like a side little goal here. But to be an author is such a tremendous blessing, one I never envisioned,
Nice.
but very thankful for.
Nice, and I love it. So, you know, through the process of writing the book, I know you said that you were doing your own documentation, you were taking things down, but did you have a moment when you're like, I'm not gonna do this. I just wanna stop writing this book?
You know, though that particular train of thought didn't cross my mind, because I kind of saw the bigger picture in hand. As I say, readers know ahead of time my fiance passed away, so this doesn't give anything of the book away. But in her last
Mm-hmm.
moments, I promised her that I would tell her story, because previously we had something very similar, but it was going to be her and I telling the story together, how she survived, how we overcame it.
Yes.
And that's so we already had this idea in mind, probably a different title,
Mm-hmm.
two different perspectives on the same subject here. But I told her in the last months, I promised to tell a story. I promised to continue to honor your legacy and to be able to, tell our story here. And so even on my worst days as I was writing, as the tears were pouring out of my face, the times where I had to, remove myself from writing and take a couple of days off or take a couple hour break, I was just
Yeah.
like, there's a bigger picture at hand here. It's to come through on a promise. So many people don't come through on promises. Our word is
That's
bond.
true.
Our word
Yeah.
means everything. Just a few weeks ago, I was promised to go get ice cream with the family, and they didn't come through until that. So it's like little things like that. A lot
Yeah.
of people don't. A lot of people compromise the word, so they don't have,
Exactly.
and just to come through onto such a tall task, it was such an honor, and such a blessing to do, because in reality,
Mm-hmm.
this whole situation is not a dream. No one rolls out of bed and be like, I can't wait to lose my significant other to talk about it.
Yeah.
This is
Mm-hmm.
this whole foundation is actually a nightmare, not a dream. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, on my worst day, I was like, you know what, we have to push through, because this is for the promise. You need to come through on the promise. And I'll be very honest with you. When the story finally got published and came out, those are probably the first time I cried happy and sad tears at the same time, because I was so happy that I came through on the promise. But at the same time,
Nice.
it's like at the compromise of what I was actually saying. It's
What
like,
you
oh
have
man,
to do. Yeah.
yeah.
Nice.
But I could not turn it away, because I had to come through on this promise.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So share with us one special moment that you can recall with her, or a favorite moment that you have.
Oh man, there's so many of them. I was very blessed to say, as a grown child, basically, I still watch cartoons,
Grown
wrestling,
child.
anime. I play video games still. For the dating world is already crazy as it is. And
Hmm.
as I'm experiencing now. But back then too, as well, it was the same thing. It's the same game over and over. No matter, it's just I'm just 5 years removed from it, but it's still the same game. It's still crazy out there. And when I was dating before I got with my fiance, for a male, for anybody to open up and be like, this is what I am, and for somebody to accept it with open arms is beyond, it's mind blowing. It's God's grace right there, because to find somebody to hear me say this and be like, okay, what's the problem? Most people would be like,
Exactly.
you know what, yeah, we're good. Why don't you go mature a little bit more and then come back to me? So
I
to find
know.
a partner who actually was a wrestling fan like myself. She grew up in a big
Hmm.
family, and her brothers were all into wrestling. Like a lot of the kids in our age were, and
Yes.
she actually watched it vividly every single Monday and every Friday when it's on, and every pay per view. And for her to watch, the cartoons and the anime and stuff like that, she didn't really get into video games, but to have those two elements is mind blowing. And to find that
It's
in a partner
yeah.
is crazy. So, as some of my favorite memories, I would say, is to go to, we would actually go to live wrestling events, and she would
Hmm.
walk around with the women's championship. She actually held it in her car and showed it off all the time. We have so many pictures together and so many fond memories of going to wrestling
Hmm.
events. It's very, very strange to say, what, my partner wasn't into wrestling as much as I was, but to go to those live events and hear her booing and hear her cheering her favorite wrestlers is crazy, and memories I'll forever cherish.
Nice. That's awesome. Nice. So your book, A Light Through the Pouring Rain, the story about your journey, your experience. What is one takeaway that you can say if you read this book, you're going to grab from it?
Sure. I definitely would say it's to keep things light, no pun intended, and to keep your sense of humor. No matter what your situation is, it doesn't have to be the extreme like mine was. I honestly hope I'm the only one who goes through that, although I know that's the farthest from the truth. But,
Mhm.
in all honesty, I want readers to walk away with keep things as normal as possible. Keep your sense of humor. So many times we feel guilty about smiling and laughing when we're going through a
Yeah,
negative situation. Don't feel guilty at all. Continue to keep things as normal as possible. Keep your sense of humor. Keep laughing. Keep things light. Keep your chest up. Don't walk around moping and having your shoulders rolled forward and have your chest perked up. So still keep your chin up. Keep smiling. That no matter
yeah,
what you go through in life, that there's nothing that should ever take away your smile. I always say this, and it's a life lesson from my mom, is that we were all blessed with the crown over our head. The faith of God, the crown on our heads. We're all kings and queens in our own right here.
yeah,
And when you wake up you should wake up with the crown, and you should go to sleep with the crown on. There's nothing in between that should ever knock your crown off. And that's why we all should
exactly.
walk around with the confidence in God's plan and
Mm-hmm.
God, the confidence. Even if you don't believe in that, just walk around with confidence of your own individual self. We all should walk around with that, and so you should readers should be able to take away that no matter how bad our scenario got and how ugly it got, the crown never fell off our heads. I think my
Never.
fiance was more confident as she was losing weight and balding than she was prior to that. I think she gained confidence somehow, some way. So
Yeah,
if it's to be able to keep the crown on your head, to maintain a positive outlook, if it's to keep your sense of humor, keep things light, to keep things as normal as possible. However you want to dissect the book, there's so many elements to it. But if you could take away one thing, then I did more than enough for my job.
nice, nice. And I mean, the journey for you personally, it was living, being there, experiencing it with her, and family members who are maybe out, outside looking in, they're thinking, how do I speak to you, how do I share an encouragement with you? I mean, many people, they process that, how do I say things and how do I go about sharing my own thoughts or views. How would you say that someone who's thinking or going through that, or they have a family member battling cancer or something right now, how can you say, hey, just be there for them, and you don't have to say much, but you just can be there for them? How would you tell them to do that?
Sure. It's very funny. My aunt and I just had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. My aunt was a passerby in my fiance and I situation. But, as I told her, it's to each his own. It really depends on the individual. Some
Hmm.
individuals are more open up and some are more close to the chest. My fiance and I
Yeah.
decided that it was best for us to just have our immediate family and that was it. My aunt had seen my fiance's change. She had stopped by the house a couple of times, but overall, though, the best thing is it's really to respect the boundaries, and it really depends on the individual. If the in
Yeah.
it lets just a simple comment is like, if you ever need anything, I'm always a phone call or text away. Goes a long way. Just because you know that you can lean on that support anytime you need it, but at the same time, it's to the individual's preference. If the individual wants to approach you, let them approach you. I think so many times family members, friends tend to overextend themselves in these situations where they try to jump through leaps and bounds, and they try to help out in so many ways, and and it's no problem at all. There's really no problem with that, but it really depends on the individual. If the individual is asking for you to jump through leaps and bounds, I think they're already asking for too much. But in all
Yeah.
honesty, though, if the family member is, if the person is asking for the family member to do that, it's great that you can respect their well wishes, but you don't need to overextend yourself. Sometimes less is more. Those little comments that if you ever need anything, I'm one call away, goes a lot further than the person who overextended themselves, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
any person who's gone through cancer or any situation, there's always that family member who overextends themselves. And there's always that one family member who's like, hey, don't forget what I did yesterday or today, or you don't forget I blessed you when you sneezed last week.
Yep.
There's
Mhm.
every person who's gone through a loss or a pretty
Yeah.
big scenario knows there's that one friend or family member that never could take the spotlight off themselves and they wanted to make it all about themselves. Don't forget I did this, that, and
What
the
did
other.
I
But
do? Exactly.
yes,
Yep.
and they're always like, don't forget, and
Mhm.
there may not be any ill intention behind it. It may just be how the individual is. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, though,
True.
it's really to the person going through a diagnosis is preference. And if they want to keep it close to the chest, by all means, respect that. If they want to be open about it, okay, let's go through down that
Yeah.
avenue as well. So it really just depends on the individual here.
Nice. That's true. So, did she have anything like on a bucket list or something that she wanted to do? I know. Did you guys do anything like that before she passed?
No, unfortunately not. You know, we kept everything positive for the most part. We didn't
Hmm.
know it was the end until it was the end. Like to be 100% sincere with you here.
Hmm.
So we didn't have a bucket list because we never even spoke about the worst case scenario. You know, those thoughts and those, you know, it'll come through your mind realistically. Like
Yeah,
you think of like, oh my God, this could be a possibility, but you don't harp on it. It just kind of like goes through one ear and comes out the
and
other.
come through
And
the other. Yeah.
yeah, so we didn't necessarily have a bucket list because we didn't know it was the end until the end here. But you know, that's how I go about my mission statement here when I started. You know, it's to honor my fiance's legacy, but also to be a testimony of God's goodness. And you know, it's very hard for readers to see that or to hear that and be like, wait a second, how can he say
That
this and then
I
do
know,
that?
right?
Because the
Yeah.
same person who took her, so to speak, is the same
Mhm.
person that you want to be a testimony of. How's that?
Mhm.
So, you know, what I mean is this: that she walked around. We were together for 5 years, and she had cancer for three of those. And for two of those 3 years, she was undiagnosed. So she walked around and she could have passed away at any given moment within those 3 years, you know, with those 2 years undiagnosed. So, you know, my testimony of God's goodness is that I was blessed with an additional 3 years with her. And I'm very thankful for that because that time and those memories we had were, you know, I'll forever cherish and I'll never forget. You know, so we didn't exactly have a bucket list, but I am very thankful that I was blessed with an additional 3 years with her. And you know,
Mhm.
like if she was to be taken day one, I wouldn't have been able to go to more events with her. I wouldn't have been able to go to concerts with her, to travel with her. You know, I jumped on my
Yeah.
first airplane with her, you know, to Chicago, and I was, you
Nice.
know, I was screaming my heart out, crying my eyeballs out because I had never been on a flight and I was scared of heights here. But you know, I wouldn't have had that moment if it wasn't for that.
Mhm.
So I am very thankful for that. But there was, at the end of the day, to piggyback to your question here, there wasn't necessarily a bucket list here, but you know, I was able to experience a lot more memories with her thanks to God's goodness here.
Nice. And was there any life lessons that you personally took away from her journey or just from her personality and who she was? Like, what's one thing that you could say, hey, I took this away from her because of how, strong she was and how confident she was?
Yes, there's so many, and I could probably go on a whole podcast speaking about all the lessons she had taught me during it. But you know, a few of them to take away is definitely the confidence. Like for her to get more confident as she got deeper into the process is mind blowing. There's days I go to the gym and I walk by the mirror and I feel like the biggest guy in the world, and then I come home and look at my bathroom mirror and I feel like the smallest guy of all time. You know, it's like she
Yeah.
constantly walked around with the crown of confidence, and nobody could take that away from her. I walk away with that to keep the sense of humor, you know, we both had quite a bit of a sense of humor here, but for her to keep it, to go through chemotherapy, to hear her be sick in the bathroom and then come out smiling is mind blowing. It's
Mhm.
absolutely baffling to think that she would do that. And it's the sheer willpower. I think
Yeah.
because she was so naive to how the seriousness of the situation, because she has a, as I was telling you, she had like the bubble syndrome, the small town girl syndrome.
Mm.
She was just literally a girl who was born and raised in this small town, and the whole entire world was based in this small town. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody would pass by and know each other's story and everything like
Yeah.
that. And you know, she was very naive to the situation, and to her benefit, that's how it got her through this because she wasn't naive, she wouldn't have, you know, she would have really grasped the seriousness of it and
Yeah.
really, you know, maybe honed in on the ugliness of it. But she never let it phase her, you know, to her very last breath. She never stopped, you know, and
Nice.
you know, to have a positive outlook into life, to keep her sense of humor, the sheer willpower. You know, there's times that we all get caught up and we think this is the end of the world. We think our scenarios are the worst thing, and we're the only person
Mhm.
who's ever experienced it. Where you take a step back, and I think that's the reason why we have that saying is like someone, if there's always worse, and someone always has it worse than you do. You know, it's a perspective thing. We need to really appreciate our circumstances, appreciate the ones we surround themselves with, and to realize, you know, take a step back away from the cloud or the that emotional
Yeah.
tornado, and realize that, you know, what I'm going through is not as bad as I thought it was, and that's how it is, you know, and that's how I continue to live my life to this day. That, you know, even I have aches and pains, I'm walking, and I'm like, you know what, I don't feel like going on a walk, you know. Now my mind says like I'm very thankful that I can even go on this walk because there's somebody praying that they even could put one foot in front of the other. There's somebody in a wheelchair right
Exactly.
now who's just like, man,
Yeah.
I wish I could just take one step, and I'm taking that for granted. I don't take things for granted anymore. I live life, you know, basically what I experienced witnessing her, you know, and I'm very thankful for her, you know, not thankful for the situation, but thankful for her
For
words
her.
and all the
Yeah.
lessons I learned from her.
Nice. I love that. I love it so much. And I love that, she left something behind. You mentioned multiple times that, people won't understand how you're going to give God thanks for the fact that you went through this journey, and they might be thinking, hey, he took her away from you. But it's this sense of peace that he gives you, the sense of assurance that, hey, you know what, despite the fact that you went through this process, but I proved to you who I am during this process. So that's amazing. So thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey, and for writing this book. So share with us how we can find your book, how we can keep up with the events that you're doing, and your website. Share that with us.
Sure. So you can buy my book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and on many indie retailer websites. It's basically to your preference there. I could go on for another podcast naming all hundreds of those, but you'll
Yeah.
most likely find on your preference there, any indie retailer there. You can find me on my website, which is my name, jamesruvalcaba.com. You can join the
Hmm.
newsletter to stay in contact with me. That's the best way to communicate with me is the newsletter, or you can email me. And I have a slot there you can email me personally. You never know how far your words will go with somebody. You never know. It could be someone's last
Yep.
straw, and your words could,
Yep.
hopefully help them for another day. See another 24 hours here. So I'm always one message away. On my social media, you can find me on my name as well, James Ruvalcaba. I'm on most social media platforms, not on dating websites. You won't find me there. But I'm on most social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Yeah, feel free to connect with me there, and I'll reply as fast as I possibly can.
Nice. Awesome. And you're going to be on the cover of a magazine coming up shortly, right? Share that with us.
Yes, I'm proud to announce here that I'll be on the cover of Own It magazine on the October issue. It's a very great timing because it's Cancer Awareness Month. October, and then for it to be the birth month of my fiance as well. It's two birds for one stone basically. So it's a blessing to be able to cover the magazine and to be able to share more stories about it. My fiance and I, and to help people keep putting one foot in front of the other and turn their tragedies into
Yes.
triumphs as well.
Love that. Thank you so much for being here, James. Thank you for sharing. So go grab a copy of the book, The Light Through the Pouring Rain. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and his website also. So we're going to be giving one lucky winner on the podcast a free copy of the book. So keep checking our Instagram page. We're going to be sharing more about that. Thank you so much, James.